Hey witches, how you doing today? We're back with another video, and today I want to talk about, I want to do an anti-haul, and I want to have a little chat about sort of consumerism and capitalism in witchcraft. 2 videos ago, I did like a little haul video of some books and decks and thrift store finds that I had found, which is fun, right? You see them all the time, these haul videos. And I actually hate the word haul, and I mentioned it in my video, right? But the algorithm loves the word haul. And this whole idea of doing a haul video just didn't, I mean, it's great, it gets views, right? Hey, I want to get paid, right? But I also felt like I needed to do something, an anti-haul video here to sort of rectify that. So here's why it makes me uncomfortable. First of all, these haul videos, they promote consumerism and capitalism, right? This idea of buy, buy, buy. This idea of we must accumulate and collect. And what it does is it makes witchcraft inaccessible to so many people who can't afford to spend $125 on a gorgeous new athame. And witchcraft has traditionally been the craft of the disenfranchised, right? The people who don't hold the power turn to witchcraft to take back their power. And very often those people who don't hold the power don't have the funds to be purchasing all of these things. And so I find these haul videos are kind of, they're sort of like, they're almost a turnoff for people who are like, but I can't afford all that, right? Look, oh, I need all this? I can't afford it. Now, and it's just this idea of stuff, having to have the right stuff that really doesn't sit well with me. First of all, it's not true. I love the old saying that you should be able to stand in the center of an empty room, buck naked, and do magic, right? If you've got the power, this idea that, like, you know, all you really need is your mind. And I think there's some truth in that, right? We don't necessarily need all this stuff, but it does help. I'll give it that, right? It does help to have these physical things to interact with and to use to sort of peak our visualization. Second of all, this idea of stuff is not necessarily historically accurate. The witches, healers, and cunning folk of old weren't going down to the local witch shop to buy themselves a new $200 knife. They were turning to their cutting board and grabbing the knife off of that and using that to, you know, direct energy or chop herbs or whatever it is that they needed that for. They used what they had on hand. And yeah, I think we sort of need to go back a little bit towards that, right? We've had so much consumerism. And right after I made that that video, I caught a podcast. I will link it below in the description. I think every single witch should go and listen, well, to this particular podcast, but also to this channel. It's by a creator named Trae Dorn. Their insights are always like bang on. They also have a really great TikTok channel where they have spent a lot of time sort of bantering back and forth with witch talk practitioners about why what they're doing is wrong. And they're very good at it. But anyways, it's by Trae Dorn. It's called BS Free Witchcraft is the name of the podcast. And we're talking about episode 51 that came out September 23rd called Consumerism and Witchcraft. Okay, I listened to this and I got instant like guilt over having done this haul video, right? And I'm like, oh, their take is so good. And I really do think every witch should give it a listen. I will link it down below in the description. Go find it. It's so good. So anyways, all of this combined really got me thinking I need to do an anti-haul video to show items that I use or have used in my practice that aren't, you know, purchased from the local witch shop. And I think that would be a lot of fun. So I want to show some of that stuff off and sort of talk you through what I use and why I use it. Before we get into it though, for those of you who are new around here, my name is Trae. Welcome to the channel. We talk about all things witchcraft in all different ways. And for those of you who are returning viewers, maybe coming in from another video, welcome back. I so appreciate the support. Thank you. And all of you, please consider subscribing. It is a really great way to help us build the channel. So let's do an anti-haul. All right. So I have a selection of items here beside me because my actual working space here is so cluttered, I can't put anything there, but I have a little table beside me with all kinds of fun things on it that I want to go through and share with you. And maybe a little bit about how some of it might even tie into like my tradition and some of the things that we're sort of instructed to work with and how we can sort of work around it. So I'm going to start with something super basic, right? The bowl. The offering bowl, the bowl to work your witchcraft in, right? Maybe you've got a spell you want to do in it that's got like water, or it's, making a money bowl. I don't know, whatever, right? Just use a cereal bowl, you guys, right? Just go to your cupboard, grab a bowl, and use a cereal bowl. You don't have to have some specially consecrated, kept in a padded case bowl. Do you need a cauldron? Use a bowl, right? Now, is it fun to have a cute little iron cauldron that you picked up? Absolutely. But do you need it? No, you really don't. Just use a bowl. I know it sounds so silly, but it's that simple, right? A lot of times we'll talk about having an athame, right? Or whatever. You could just use a kitchen knife. In my tradition, we're supposed to have a black, a white, and a red handled knife. You could just get some like tape and tape it around, tape of that color. You could just tie a string around it of that color and have 3 separate knives. Right? You don't have to go and buy special knives. Or you could even, if you're lucky enough, maybe you have like this is an old boning knife, right? That we don't use anymore. I could keep it with my actual witchcraft stuff. Or you know what? You could put it in the kitchen and use it when you need it. And when you go to do your witchcraft, pull out your knife and use it. It's okay. It doesn't have to be some pampered baby, beautiful, $125 knife that you got at the witch store. You can just use a kitchen knife. And you can still use that kitchen knife in your everyday. Back in the days of old, right? They used what they had on hand. They didn't have a special knife for their witchcraft, their cunning folk, their, healing practice. They used the knife they had on hand. Same goes for like wands. I know a lot of us love wands, right? You want to buy a pretty wand? Okay, I have a couple examples for you here. This is literally a piece of driftwood that I found. It fits like perfectly. And I've not done anything to it. This is literally how I found it. Just a piece of driftwood. That would make a beautiful wand. Or I have this one here. Was an old piece of branch I found that actually had the end of all of the bark is worn away, but there's still some bark left here, and it's almost like a perfect handle. Keep an eye out when you're out in nature, when you're walking around looking for this kind of stuff. It's absolutely free and it's there for you. Speaking of nature, I've shared this before. These are it's like a vetch plant, and this is the seeds. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the exact plant. Makes a beautiful rattle. I took 2 of the dried stems, put them together, and wrapped some red twine around the bottom. And all of a sudden, I've got this lovely rattle that didn't really cost me anything. Or my favorite is feathers. Look at this gorgeous. This is a goose flight feather. The ponds in the geese live in the summer at the ponds around my local suburb area. I just go for walks, and sometimes you find stuff like this. Keep your eyes open. It's free. It's from, it's provided by the Genius Loci where I live. It's good. It's good stuff. Now, when you're getting into, say, spellcraft, and people have all these cute little, like, sachet bags and poppet bags and all these kind of things, you know what? This is the favorite thing I ever saw. Use a toilet paper roll. And all you do is you fold in one side, just like this. You fold it in, put whatever you need in here, and then you just push the other side down. Oops, like so, and then push the other side down. And you've got a cute little sachet. You can write on it. You can bury this. It will dissolve in the ground. You can bury it. You can burn it. You can dissolve it in water. I don't know how you'd use it with air. But theoretically, if you just threw it up into the air and let the wind sort of blow it away, it wouldn't go very far, right? And eventually it would just decompose where it is. Right? Great for casting little spells and stuff. And it's a toilet paper tube, you guys. Why? Because you got it in hand and it's absolutely free. It comes from something that we're all going to use anyways. So why not? When it comes to casting spells, just buy cheap white candles. back in the olden times, people weren't having specially colored candles. They used what they had on time, tallow candles, right? Tallow rendered candles, or beeswax candles if they were, you know, maybe a little more profitable. You don't need, you know, it's funny actually. One of the things I said in my practice that might be a little bit money, but I was like, you know, I'm going to go to just using natural beeswax candles in my practice. And funnily enough, my sister was moving and was like, hey, do you need candles? And I'm like, well, what do you got? She had this big box, like big, full of tea lights and white tapers. Like exactly like this size white tapers. And I was like, oh, okay. It's free. I'll take it. I will use it. Right? There's nothing wrong with going to the dollar store for your stuff if you have to, right? We don't, you know, we can't make, maybe you can make your own candles at home, but again, that's kind of expensive. That's kind of bougie at this point to make your own candles. So what's the most cost effective? Go to the dollar store. Speaking of which, just buy your herbs at the dollar store, right? Just get the basic herbs and, you know, bring them home. You could store them in the bags. You don't have to put them in a separate container, but this is like oregano. It's just from my kitchen. If I need oregano in a spell, I go to my kitchen and I just pull my kitchen herbs for it. I do have a whole like apothecary thing going on where I have lots of foraged herbs and stuff, but like all of this, you know, basic stuff that comes from the kitchen, I just use what's in the kitchen. On that note, I do have here's like lilac. It grows in my front yard. So I harvested and dried a bunch of lilac blossoms and I put them in an old jam jar, right? Still even got the label on it. I can't read it anymore. It's all washed out, but right. I just used an old jam jar. Another one, I make incenses every month. And I mean, it's not cheap making incense, but you know what? Do you know what I keep them in? These are jars from peaches. We buy they're usually full of peaches and we buy them at Costco. And all I do is I peel the label off and those are my incense jars. I don't go and, you know, go to the antique store and buy some like beautiful antique jars. I mean, hey, you know what? If I can afford to do that, maybe I will. But it's not practical. I just use peach jars and I love because they have like, you just peel the label off and they just have this plain green top on them. And I just know those are my incense jars, right? Again, just using what I've already got. And another one, oh, if you need like a chalice or something, just use a glass, right? You can do spell work in this. You can drink from it. You can put offerings in it. It's just a glass from my cupboard. It doesn't have to be something special. A lot of people like to use crystals and gemstones. You know what? Those cost money. And back in the day, sure, you know, if I was out forging and I came across a deposit of like the clear stone, this one, I have one right here. What am I talking about? I got this at a local lake. Quartz, clear quartz. Sometimes I forget my words, right? Yeah, I would definitely collect that and use that in my practice back in the day, right? But they probably weren't importing gemstones from all over the world. What about just a plain rock? This one here, I got this from my friend Jessica, and it instantly reminded me of the rhinoceros, which was one of my spirit animals, the rhinoceros. And this sits on my altar. This is probably one of my favorite stones to work with. And back in the day, they would have like, they would find that just that right size, right shaped stone for whatever they wanted. And they would charm it up to be their healing stone or their hexing stone or whatever. And that's what they would use, is just a stone that they found out in nature. It doesn't have to be a beautiful clear quartz point, right? Or a perfect lazulite sphere, right? It could just be a rock. A friend of mine found this for me in a parking lot at a business meeting and was like, oh, I thought of you. Bless her heart, Miss Jessica. And finally, I know one of the ones in my tradition is we wear white robes or black robes. And I went and bought myself some white robes. It was like $100 for like cotton, you know, full length hooded robes. I love it. It's great. They're also very hot and impractical sometimes. And we're heading into the dark half of the year now, and we wear our black robes. And when I was starting out, it had to be hooded. This is what I wore. Exactly this, just a old hoodie that was black. It's hooded, it suits the bill. And I'll be honest, a lot of witches don't always get dressed up in the crazy cosplay type outfits. We wear what's practical and what's comfortable. When I have to work outside and it's like 20 degrees below freezing and I'm sitting out by the campfire trying to do a working, I'm not wearing a full-length robe with big droopy sleeves. I'm working around fire. That's not practical. It's cold out. I am wearing layers of tights and tunics and I'll probably put a big hoodie over top with a big hood. That's all I really need. Or I have another one. I couldn't find exactly the one I used to use, but an old scarf, right? This is like an infinity scarf. If you put it on, you can then pull the back up, right? If you need to be hooded, like in my tradition, we need to be hooded, right? So there you go. That works as creating a hood for your practice, and you don't need to go and spend $100 on a robe. Get out your good old black hoodie and put it on. Right? Maybe you layer a couple of them up. I don't know, whatever you want to do. But do you know what I'm saying? You don't have to go out and buy all this special ritual gear. I'll be honest. My most comfortable, most best workings, I wear leggings and a tunic and a belt. And I hang some of my tools off my belt. That's about it. And my hood, right? And then I have a hood. Whether that's from a hoodie or I have like a detachable hood or I have like a scarf. Right? It's about keeping it practical. It's not about going out and accumulating stuff. My stang, I found that out in nature. I didn't purchase it from a store. I found it out in nature. It took me a year to find my first stang. Now I find them all the time, but it took me a while to find my first one. And when I did, it first of all meant so much more to me than if I had purchased it from a store. And second of all, it works. Like it's bang up awesome. Why? Because it's tied into my genius loci, because I found it here locally in my area where I practice and I work every day. So not to say that's like better or worse. It's just, hey, it was there. It was free. Why not use what the genius loci is providing? So I think a lot of times when we get into these like witchcraft hauls and stuff, we kind of lose sight of, what's important and what's practical, especially when you're new or you're starting out or you don't have a lot of means at your disposal. You don't need to do, right? You don't need to be out buying. If you want to do like divination, get a playing card deck and go online. You don't have to buy a book. Go online and look up how to do playing card divination, cartomancy. There's tons of great resources out there, and all you need is a playing deck. You don't need to spend $35 on a tarot deck when you could go down to the dollar store and spend $1 or $1.25 on a pack of cards and learn how to read those. It's just as effective and costs way less. These are also great tips for people who are maybe not living publicly as a witch, right? A lot of this stuff, it's just things that you would normally have around your home. People aren't going to look weird at a pack of cards sitting on your coffee table, right? So anyways, I just wanted to do a bit of an anti-haul, share a little bit about, the things from my practice that I have used or I do use that are maybe a little bit more on the practical side. And, in some cases, maybe even a little bit more historically accurate to, what I'm trying to go for. And I think, yeah, it's something that we need to remember, right? It's not always about consumerism and capitalism and me, mine, and more, right? That's not always what we want to go for. Sometimes it's us, ours, and enough. So, do you have anything sort of practical that you've pulled from your, from your daily life that you use in your witchcraft practice, or maybe tools that serve double purpose that you, right, like that knife? Maybe it's, I use it for cutting and I use it for directing energy. Right? There's no reason you can't use it for both. It's a fallacy that you have to have one that is dedicated just towards directing energy and you must never cut anything with it. If that's what your tradition dictates, so be it. But in practical witchcraft, you use what you got, baby. So that's our video for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks so much, you guys.